Can I so I'll tell you something I've learned recently. Okay. Because I believe as high achievers, we're like that. As high achievers, we want big things. We're pursuing big things. And so what ends up happening is we never give ourselves credit for where we're at, dude. Have you guys ever read, there's a book called The Gap and the Gain or something like that. You guys ever read this book? It's a newer book, but it's dude, let me tell you. So here's the premise of it, okay? Here's why we feel that way. So here's the best way that I could describe it, right? Can you guys see that board? You can see it, right?
Yep.
Okay. So you have this, right? Let's see if we can, there we go. You have your starting point, okay? This is your starting point for any of us, wherever we're going. Then we set a goal, right? Whatever this goal is that we're trying to achieve. It could be a short term, it could be a long term, whatever it is. And dude, we could start, man, and we could even hit the goal. That's what's crazy, dude. We could actually even hit the freaking goal. But the problem is we don't compare ourselves back to where we started. Instead, they call it like an ideal, right? We have this ideal that we compare ourselves to. And so the gap and the gain, this gap is how far away we are from our ideal. And the shitty thing about that is we're never going to be at the ideal. Like I compare it to like a horizon, right? Like you can go on pursuit of the horizon. You can make all this, but the horizon is the horizon. You'll never hit it. It's always in the distance. That's what the ideal is meant for. It's meant to keep you going. But we will even achieve these goals that are goals that, man, we never even thought were possible a couple of years ago or whatever it was. But instead of giving ourselves credit, by measuring ourselves from where we started, we measure ourselves against our ideal, which means there's always this gap. So when they say the gap and the gain, it's where you're at. There's always this gap, and you measure yourself in this gap because you're measuring yourself against an ideal that's not even attainable. So you're never happy, you're never fulfilled, you never feel worthy, you never feel qualified because you're measuring yourself against an unmeasurable, something that's not even real. But the gain is if you were to just measure yourself and going back to, okay, this is where I started, this is what I've done. You build more confidence because confidence doesn't come from, we think that confidence comes from achievements. It actually doesn't come from achievements. It comes from, it comes from past achievements because like confidence comes from past achievements. But the problem is because we're always measuring ourselves against we're in the gap because we're measuring ourselves against the ideal. We don't give ourselves the confidence because we don't look at our past achievements the way that we should look at our past achievements. So confidence comes from past achievements. So we have to recognize the past achievements to remember that we're on the direction here. So if literally everything in that moment, like if you're in the gain and measuring yourself with where you started, you're always in the gain, which means you have tons of confidence because you see yourself growing. The minute you're in the gap is the minute you're comparing yourself to an ideal. And I do that with myself. I do that with my kids. Like I'll find myself, getting after Pax for not doing things. And why is it? Dude, it's because I'm measuring him against, my view of what he should be doing. I'm 38 years old. He's 8 years old. So it's like my view of what he should be doing, it's an ideal where if I just looked at where he started and what the progression he's making, it's like, man, I would just be building him up all the time for all the shit that he's been doing and all the progress he's been making, and his confidence would increase and then he would continue to progress. So it's like we measure ourselves in the gap and we measure our kids in the gap. We measure our spouse